For over 1,000 days, one man didn't just sit at the top of the sports entertainment world, he pretty much created his own universe there. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the anatomy of that historic reign, how the character transformed, the legendary names he conquered, and, of course, the controversy that defined his entire time as champion. It started out as just another commentary line, but wow, it quickly became the perfect way to describe an entire era. This wasn't just a title reign, it was a total takeover of the whole landscape. Every single story, every major event, it all revolved around him. And for the longest time, that's exactly what he felt like, right? Challenger after challenger, legend after legend, they all stepped up, and every single one of them fell. That feeling of invincibility, it really became a core part of his whole identity. So naturally, the conversation had to shift. Was this just a great run? Or were we watching something truly historic? The kind of run that puts you in the conversation for the greatest of all time. And that's really the question at the heart of this entire thing. So how in the world did he do it? Well, to really get the wins, you first have to understand the character he became. This was not the Roman Reigns people knew from before. No way. This was someone and something completely new. The absolute key to everything was this phrase, the tribal chief. This wasn't about just being a champion, it was about being a patriarch. He put himself at the very top of a legendary wrestling family, and he demanded that everyone, from his opponents to his own blood, acknowledge him. 902 days. Just let that number sink in for a second. In the super fast-paced world of modern WWE, holding a major title for that long it's almost unheard of. This one number became the entire foundation for his claim to greatness. But look, a long reign is one thing. A legendary one? That's built on who you beat. Roman didn't just take down the stars of today. He systematically went out and conquered the heroes of yesterday to build his own legacy. And his strategy was crystal clear. To become the new legend, you have to take out the old ones. Think about it. He beats The Undertaker at WrestleMania, basically signaling a passing of the torch. Then he just dismantles John Cena, the face of a whole generation, and declares, "I am WWE." These weren't just wins, they were huge, symbolic statements. This line, from right after his match with Cena, it basically became his mantra. See, it wasn't enough to just win. His opponents and the entire audience, they had to actually say the words to acknowledge his greatness. It was all part of the psychological game of the tribal chief. And this is the crucial point, he was almost never alone. The story of Roman's reign is completely tied to the story of his family, the bloodline, a group that made sure he won by any means necessary. And this was his crew, his arsenal. You had his cousins, Jay and Jimmy Uso, the veteran tag team specialists, really the backbone of the group. Then you had the enforcer, the younger, meaner Solo Sikoa. They called him the street champion. And of course, pulling all the strings from the outside was the master strategist, his special counsel, Paul Heyman. And because of them, you started to see this pattern, this formula that played out time and time again. Just when it looked like an opponent finally had Roman on the ropes, a member of the bloodline would show up, cause a distraction, and that tiny moment was all Roman needed to hit a spear and get the win. I mean, we saw this exact formula play out in his biggest matches. Think about Drew McIntyre in front of 62,000 of his own fans in the UK. He was seconds away from winning when Solo Sikoa just shows up out of nowhere. The same thing happened against Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, when Solo hit him with a Samoan spike. That's a thumb to the throat. And it happened against Brock Lesnar before that. The bloodline was his ultimate insurance policy. But all that power, it came with a really heavy price. The most gripping drama of this entire era didn't come from his opponents. It came from the emotional chaos, the manipulation, and the betrayal inside his own family. It all started with his cousin, Jey Uso. When Jey didn't want to fall in line at first, Roman used their family bond as a weapon. Jey would be pleading with him, saying, "I love you, Us," which is a Samoan term for brother, but Roman just twisted that love into a tool to control him. Roman's response was just brutal. In their I Quit match, Roman didn't make Jey quit. He trapped Jey's injured twin brother, Jimmy, in a submission hold and forced Jey to scream, "I quit," just to save his brother. It was through that kind of emotional torture that he forced Jey into loyalty. And we saw that exact same pattern, Demand loyalty, then punish it anyway with honorary Us Sami Zayn. After one of the most emotional stories in years, Roman completely destroyed him with a spear right in front of his heartbroken hometown fans in Montreal. And it all just blew up in the ultimate betrayal. Just when Jey Uso finally stood up to Roman and was on the verge of winning, his own twin brother, Jimmy, pulls him out of the ring and costs him the whole match. The family unit, the very source of Roman's power, had just completely imploded. So, when you look back on this whole saga, you gotta pull all these different threads together. What really defined this reign? Was it just one man's incredible talent? Or was it something else entirely? This table right here, it really tells the story, doesn't it? Early on, against guys like Edge and Daniel Bryan, you saw his own raw brutality win the day. But then look what happens against his three biggest modern rivals, Lesnar, McIntyre, and Rhodes. In every single one of those matches, the deciding factor wasn't Roman by himself, it was direct interference from the bloodline. The pattern is just impossible to ignore. So, the pillars of this reign are pretty clear. First, you have his undeniable athletic skill and his power. Then you've got his cunning, win-at-all-costs strategy. Third, the constant looming presence of the bloodline. And finally, the psychological warfare he used not just on his opponents, but on his own family to keep control. Which really leaves us with one last question. When you strip everything away and just look at the body of work, the wins, how he got them, the emotional wreckage he left behind, what do you see? Was this the unstoppable reign of a truly dominant champion? Or was it a dynasty, built and held together not just by loyalty, but by fear?